beautiful friends. It's Amanda here, and today we're talking about some new curated singles collections from Oden's Eye. They just released these little 12 pan single eyeshadow collections, and I wanted to show you just a close-up look at which shadows are included. I want to show you my live swatches and just give you a little bit of information about these since this was a bit of a surprise drop. So we have three different little curated collections of their single shadows. These are not new shades. These are existing shades. I have previously reviewed these eyeshadows on my channel, so you can check out my previous videos. I'll link them down in the description box if you want to see more about these individual shadows, like performance-wise, and I'll show you some other types of swatches. Today, I'm just focusing on these little curated collections. The first one we're looking at is the Freja themed single eyeshadow set. And these are pretty well discounted. They're $75.84 US, so that's quite a bit of a markdown. And you not only get the 12 shadows, but you also get these really gorgeous little magnetic palettes. Now, I don't have the new eyeshadow palettes, like the magnetic ones, the empty ones, but since these are not new shades, I will show you the shadows that I have. And I think I'm actually going to order a couple of the palettes just because they're really pretty. I love the size. I always love the Oden's Eye artwork. They're just so ethereal and magical and special. So I do think this is something that would be useful to me. And you can purchase the palette separately. I'll show you those a little bit later on when we look into the individual palette collections. These are, like I said, a little bit of a markdown because they are bundled, so you're getting bundle pricing. But a very cool thing about that is these actually are code eligible as well, so you can stack a coupon code on top of the existing discounted bundle price, which is really quite awesome. So I'm going to add the Alva themed single eyeshadow bundle to my cart just so that you can see what I mean. Here it says it's just over $75. But if you use my affiliate code, it's just my first name, Amanda, then that will take an additional 10% off the price. So that brings it down to just over $68, which is a pretty darn good savings in my opinion. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case you're interested. You can use code Amanda to save a little bit on top. Now, here is a close-up look at the Freja palette. This is so pretty. It just feels like a little fairy tale. I absolutely love the artwork on these palettes. And I love that these little 12 pan palettes are under $7. You can use an affiliate code on these as well. So pretty darn good deal. So this is the Freja palette in case you're interested in just getting the palette if you already have these shades or if the shadows aren't the exact right thing for you. Now I'm going to be using a different magnetic palette since, like I said, I don't have these new ones yet, but I want to show you the shadows in the order that they have them displayed, especially because if you look at the shades included list on the website, they're not in the same order that the shadows are placed into the palette. So I think it can be a little bit confusing. So I'm showing you these shadows in order with a super close up and then also a super close up of the live swatch. Each one of these curated palette sets has 4 matte shadows, 2 of their multi-chrome shadows, and then 6 non-multi-chrome shimmers. These shadows all have really different textures just depending on which one you're looking at. I think you'll be able to tell from the super close up. Some of these shades are super squishy, almost like Super Shock type of texture. Others are very thick and foily. And then some are just more like a traditional straight up powder metallic shadow. I think you can sort of tell between the close up and the live swatch which ones are which, but I do recommend that you check out my previous single shadow videos from these Oden's Eye releases to get more information about individual shades. Or you can always ask in the comments if you're not sure, and I'll try my best to help you out there. I did find myself hoping that they would be releasing some new matte shades in the process of these new curated bundles because they just have so few matte singles compared to the amount of different shimmer shades that they have. So fingers crossed, hopefully we will eventually get some more matte singles. These are incredibly velvety, soft, smooth. They are not that very crumbly, pigmented type of feeling that you get from a really high concentration pigment matte. Sort of like if you've ever tried a Clarity Cosmetics shadow, those tend to be incredibly pigment rich, which I also like, but I do think these may be a little bit more user friendly and approachable for somebody who's not either looking for an incredibly, incredibly dramatic color payoff or is just not quite as well versed in layering and applying eyeshadow. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, there are plenty of people who are quite experienced. Like myself, I've been doing my own makeup for a really long time, and I would consider myself to be a more experienced eyeshadow user. And I still do often like something that is slightly softer, slightly more of a layer up type of look. And I think you can tell from these live swatches, it's not like these mattes are lacking pigment in any way. They do have an incredible color payoff, but to the touch, they have that silky, almost velvety type of feeling, and they're not that first touch, pure, dense pigment type of feeling. Hopefully, I did a decent enough job of explaining that. The mattes are very consistent across the board, and the shimmers have a few different textures. And while I enjoy the texture of these matte shadows, I don't find myself reaching for them nearly as often as I'm going for the shimmer shades, just because the shade range is more limited and they don't always have all of the colors that I'm looking for. So I do tend to go to other brands more often for their collection of mattes simply because of the limited shade range. I believe they only have 12 matte shades and they have dozens of different shimmer, metallic, multi-chrome type of colors. So I think I've just been more drawn to those simply because they have such an excellent selection. So that is the Freya Shadow Collection. It's very bright, warm pinks and greens. It's felt very springtime to me. Now we're going to look at the Norns collection. This is probably my favorite of the palette art. It's just very, I love a celestial theme. That's really what it boils down to. But this is the more blue heavy, more cool toned heavy shadow collection from this little curated set release. Again, this is a different Oden's Eye palette, but if you've seen this one from their previous singles release, it's the same size as these new palettes. So it perfectly fits 12 of their little rectangular shadow pans. If you've seen this one, then you'll know what to expect from the new palettes. We're going to go through the Norns shadows now. Again, these are not listed in the same order on the website that they are pictured in the pan, so I wanted to make sure I was clearly labeling these and showing you the numbers on the side and also the shade descriptions. Hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully it's not too much info coming all at you at once. I'm very glad that you can purchase the palettes separately because I would say color story wise, this is the one I'm least likely to gravitate towards. It's just very blue heavy. All the mattes, save for one brown shade, are the blues from the collection, and they're just not my favorite types of shades to wear in general. But if I'm going to wear blue, I tend to go more for shimmers than mattes, just based on my personal preference. We all have our own different preferences. Some people love blue eyeshadow, blue mattes. This is going to be perfect for them. Some people want really matte heavy palettes, and this is not going to work for you for one reason or another. Maybe these formulas don't work for you. Maybe it's the colors. Maybe it's the price point. That's okay. Everybody has their own preferences. There are literally tens of thousands of products available to us. I personally really vibe with the themes, with the formulas here. For this particular palette, it's just the shades that aren't my own aesthetic. However, I will say that one of my most used singles from the Oden's Eye collection is this one, the Angela shadow. You can tell this is one of those really squishy ones. I've put a nice little dent in it. This is very much like a multi-chrome super shock shadow, and I love it. So even though the mattes in here are not my favorite, they do have one of my all-time favorite single shadows in here. And you can see that one is not quite as foily and thick looking. It has more of that emollient kind of slippy feel to it on the skin. And I know that's not for everybody, but I personally really love this shade. I love the texture. I'm also a big fan of this shadow called James. It reminds me of pyrite or fool's gold. Just that gray, brown, bronze, silver, gold. Something about it is very rich. And you can tell from the swatch, this is a totally different texture. It's very thick and foily, and I personally like that too. Again, I know it's not for everybody, but I just think it's so stunning on the lids. I really like the idea of doing curated sets. This is something that many brands that offer singles have been doing for years, and I think this is a wonderful way to not only help people who may be overwhelmed by choosing colors and trying to put them together in a way that makes sense in a palette. It's a great way to add new life and reinvigorate a previous launch without just pumping out more stuff. But I love that they did it with such intentionality with the addition of these new magnetic palettes. It definitely feels like a smart release and something that makes sense for the brand. And I overall just think this is a really cute idea. I think it's going to be incredibly helpful and user friendly for somebody who did want to get into these shadows, but they are quite expensive, so it's hard to pull the trigger if you're not 100% sure that you're going to love the colors, that they're going to work together, that it's going to be something that vibes with your style. This is a really good idea. I like it. I hope that this is something we could see again in the future. Maybe launch a couple of new matte shades alongside some curated sets with previous shimmers. I think that would be really smart. I would be incredibly interested in something like that. And not only is it a good way to, like I said, reinvigorate a product that already exists, but it's helpful to customers. It's a great way to reinforce their themes. We have seen them do all of these themes. Freya, Norns, Alva, these are all existing collections within the brand already. So it just feels very concise. It feels very intentional and well thought out. I like that. That's what I want to see from a launch like this, is not something that gives me the feeling, oh, they just threw this together to get rid of some shadows. This whole launch doesn't feel like that at all. It definitely seems like something that is well planned out, well thought out. And I am a sucker for magnetic palettes. I love to build my own palettes. But I know not everyone enjoys that process or feels confident in their skills of building your own palette. So, especially with these pricier shadows, I think it's nice to get that build your own palette feel, but have some help with the shade selection and some help with the price. That discount does not hurt. The very last palette that we're looking at here is the Alva collection. I think that shade-wise, this is my personal favorite. These are the colors that I am most drawn to, most attracted to. Of course, heavily purple. Purple is my favorite eyeshadow color, so probably nobody is surprised about that. I love that they paired a lot of purples with some super soft, almost pastel type of colors and some bold red shades. For me personally, this is the color story that I can see myself reaching for most often. And as far as the magnetic palette goes, I would say it's my second favorite. So this would be my overall pick. If I was going to shop one of these curated sets from the site, this is definitely the one that I would go for. But I think that I'm gonna get the empty palettes for the Norns and Alva, just the magnetic palettes, and do some of my own little palette building videos in the future, if that's something you would be interested in. However, if any of these catch your eye, this is definitely the best deal as far as like the price per shadow. One of these bundles is the way to go price-wise. Even with all the discounts, it's still really expensive, but overall, you're not gonna get like a better deal on these little indie singles. I want to point out before I forget that the Alva and Norns palette do have one shadow that's repeated. The shade Chloe, which is a multi-chrome little violet shade. You'll see it's in the very bottom row here on the Alva palette. It does appear in both the Alva and Norns collections. So if you are going to purchase both of those bundles, you're going to get a repeat of the shade Chloe. I just wanted to make that really clear for anybody because I think in a way that does a little bit diminish the value. So just keep an eye on that. That is the only shade that's repeated across these collections. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge blow to the value, the like per shadow dollar value. I just wanted to point it out because it took me a minute to notice that there was a duplicate. So just in case you're shopping, be aware of that. Let me know what type of build your own palettes you would be interested in the future. Those haven't been super popular on my channel lately, so I haven't been doing as many of them. I still love to make them. I still make them for my personal use more than for actually making content. But I've been wanting to do a couple of those this fall. Let me know what type of inspiration you want to see. Which brands do you want to see appearing in those videos? Do you like when it's all one brand? Like, do you want to see an all Oden's Eye, an all Lethal, all ColourPop, or whatever? Or do you like it when it's more color story focused and has a mix of brands? For me, I think the single brand BYOP videos are more helpful if you are planning to make an order from that brand. Like if you're going to make a lethal order, if you're going to make an Oden's Eye or whatever order, then the single brand BYOPs are probably more helpful. But if you're looking to maybe be inspired by what you already have in your own collection, or you can sort of extrapolate the colors out to other shadows and not that exact one that I mentioned, then the multi-brand ones I think are a lot of fun as well and definitely more theme focused, more color story focused, which is how I tend to work, but that may not be how everybody else's brains tend to work. So I want to hear what would be most fun and most helpful for you. And let me know what you think about these little shadow collections. Which one catches your eye? Do you want to see me do a look with one of these? Or are you interested in maybe me building my own color stories from these shadows? I always love to hear what you think about things too. So make sure you leave all your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. And I love your face. Bye!